Well, I'm glad that 5,000 people showed up tonight. This way we can benefit. But what you can do is take what you learned and share it with each one of you. 100 will be more than 5,000. Is that good? Good deal? Who's going to do that? You liars. You're not going to do that. All right. The big question is, can we trust the Bible? Is this the topic of our discussion tonight? Has the Bible been corrupted? I have a copy of the Bible in the Turkish language. See that? What does it say? Kutsal Kitab means the holy book. Kitab means book, right? Kutsal, holy. And I have a copy in the English with thin paper, so it looks small, but it's pretty large. And we'll learn a little bit about the content of the Bible. But there's no book in the world that's been more under attack than the Bible. But at the same time, there's not been a book that has impacted more people in the world throughout history. So it is worthwhile to know as much as we can. You're too far from me. You want to come here so I can see you? You give me energy when you're in front of me. Perfect. He speaks my language. Who speaks my language here? Arabic. Yeah. 1, 2, and 3 only. I thought the Arabs are going to invade the world, but they're not doing a good job of it, it seems. So we do have people from various countries. I'm glad to see Turks, India, Panama. I saw a woman from Panama here. Even from America. There are Americans here. That's amazing. And I'm Lebanese. I was born and raised in the country of Lebanon. I grew up in a Christian family, but Christian by name. Didn't know anything about the Bible. Nothing. I didn't even have a copy of the Bible. Never read the Bible. Until a young man gave me a copy and said, "Hey, you need to read the Bible." And so I began to read the Bible, and I realized I'm not really a Christian. It's just by name. And the Bible began to make an impact in my life, and over time I began to study it, and then doubt it, and began to study about it. I read stuff for it and against it in various languages, and I ended up being a Bible translator. Translated the Bible into Arabic, and I led the team to translate to Turkish and Farsi and Kurdish and Kabyle and some other languages. So I know a little bit about the Bible, but I'm still a little baby because there's so much more to know. And the more I learn, the more I realize there's a lot more to learn. So don't look at me as an expert. Just look at me as a friend who's trying to help you with what I have discovered over the years, especially as many people outside Christianity and within Christianity have put doubts on the authenticity of the Bible or reliability of the Bible. So it's a short lecture today. Let it be a discussion. I begin because there's a video there, intimidating camera. I won't interrupt it too much so that the video will be happy. And then after the video is shut down, we can just chat. We can talk until 3 in the morning. Is that all right? Yeah. About 3 or 2:30. 2:30. So this is are we on the screen? Yes, we're on the screen. Next. There is a verse here from the Quran, because there are people from the Muslim religion who question the Bible. There's been a rumor that the Bible has been corrupted. But I don't know where that verse is. Here it is. They know full well to whom we have given the book, that it has been sent down from your Lord in truth. Never be then of those who doubt. That means don't doubt the what? The book. And the book in the Quran means the Bible. Torah, Zabur, and Injil. Then it continues, perfect are the words of your Lord in truthfulness and in justice. No man can change his words. He is the all-hearing, the all-knowing. And that's Capital 6, 114 to 115. So there are actually many verses. Almost all of Surah Baqarah, the second surah, which is the largest, longest surah in the Quran, refers to the same thing. If you are in doubt, ask the people of the book. If you in لم تقيموا التوراة والإنجيل لستم على شيء. Unless you value the Bible, you are nothing. So there's a lot of Quranic verses that tell you that the Bible is reliable. And here it is in Arabic. والذين أتيناهم الكتاب يعلمون أنه منزل من ربك بالحق فلا تكونن من الممترين وتمت كلمة ربك صدقا وعدلا لا مبدل لكلماته وهو السميع العليم الأنعام. So it's the same one as we read in English a minute ago. So I quoted one verse only because we have lots of things to talk about. If you want to know about other verses, I have on my computer a number of verses, maybe the number 10 or 15, that will show that the Quran acknowledges the Bible has to be from God and it's true, it's not been changed, and it orders people not to doubt it. Okay? That's why I'm surprised why so many people doubt it, say, oh, it's corrupted. And that we will deal with it in a minute. Now Jesus, on the other hand, also says the Word of God does not change. You see, God is not a man. You know that, right? Man can change our mind. We can lie, we can deceive, we can fix things, turn things around, twist things the way we want. But God is constant, and He's faithful to His word, and He promised. One Quranic verse, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ حَافِظُونَ. I have sent the revelation, and I will protect it. And Jesus says the same thing. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. My words here refers to the Gospels, Al-Injil. But in Luke 16:17, it is easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one dot of the law to become void. These are very strong words. السماوات والأرض تزولان ونقطة من كلامي لا تزول. One point, one dot of the Bible does not pass away or is not void, cannot be voided, that is to say. So we have God testifying that He is able to protect His word, and there's acknowledgement that this is the word of God. And if it is the word of God, and if it's corrupted, then we are accusing God of corrupting it. So these are introductory points. Here are some Bible facts. Now let's try to understand a little bit about what the Bible, and why I'm so convinced that the Bible is the Word of God. And there's no doubt at all. When you read the Word of God, you know that it is God who's speaking. It's not human being. But God used human beings to record it. God always uses human beings to do His will. When He spoke to Moses, He spoke a word that Moses could hear. It wasn't written at the time. It was just verbal communication. Moses put it down in writing, and that's what we have, the Torah, which is the first five books of Moses, or first five books of the Bible, called the Pentateuch, Penta meaning five, and in Arabic, Torah, which is the Hebrew word for the 5 books of Moses. So the Bible is not just one book. Please listen to this. I wouldn't say almost, all other religions, other than Christianity, have one book written by one person at one particular time in history. The Bible is a library of books written over a long period of time. Some say from 1400 up to 1600 years. And so these are the facts that help us. 66 books. 66 books. When we say book, it means a volume, sifr in Arabic. For example, Genesis is the first book. It's this big. That's not Arabic, so it should be on this side. Yeah, this big. This is Genesis. Then we have Exodus and so on. So each one of these was written at a different time in history, counting 39 in the Old Testament. Old Testament meaning before Jesus came to earth and lived on earth before his birth. There are 39 books. And those 39 books include the Torah and the Zabur, books of wisdom and poetry and songs and hymns. Also includes the prophecies, lots of prophecies. And then we have 27 New Testament books. That's after Jesus came on earth. There were 27 books. So together it makes 66. And this is just trivia. You like trivia? 1,189 chapters. That's quite a lot. And it's even counted in verses and words. How many words is this? 807,361 words and 31,103 verses. That's in the original languages, not in the English or the Arabic, because when they're translated, the number of words changes, right? Because of the translation, paraphrases, and so on. Written over a period of 1,600 years, and 40 different prophets and apostles wrote it, and in various languages. We have Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, primarily. And these prophets came also from different areas in the world. Some of the writings were in Turkey, your country. Lots of the New Testament books were written in Turkey. And some were written in Jerusalem, some written in Greece, others written in Italy, in Rome, and in Turkey, Ephesus, which is Izmir now. We have a whole book written for the church in Ephesus. And so it's diverse. Some were in Iran. Daniel was in Iran. He was the prime minister of the Iranian kingdom at the time called Chaldean or Assyrian kingdom. So different cultures, different eras of time, over 1,600 years. And the amazing thing is they all agree with each other. That's why they're put together in one book, one volume. This is a miracle. The miracle of consistency in language, meaning terminology and what these words mean, also in theme and ideas and in historical facts, and also supporting one another. You'll see one book referring to another one referring to one before it. So we go to the next slide. Here's another interesting thing. When people say the Bible is corrupt, usually they heard it. They haven't found out on their own, right? There are ways of finding out on your own for something like if I wrote an email to you. You're from Chicago? This is Chicago. I'll call you Chicago unless you tell me your name. Chicago. This is Chicago. So I write a letter to Chicago, okay? And Chicago sends it to Arizona. And he changes it. He changes some words and then sends it to Honolulu. And then Honolulu writes it back to Chicago. And Chicago looks and says, hey, I didn't say that. And he goes back to the original letter that I wrote, and he finds somebody played around. Somebody changed the words, right? So how do we know if things change? You go back to the original, correct? Does that make sense? Okay, if you read the second version and third and fourth copy and sixth and 10th and hundreds and then thousands, it's possible that the manuscript can be corrupted over time. And that is human. It's possible. There are many reasons. I didn't put a lot of pictures. I have only one manuscript, which I'll show you later, an old manuscript, picture of it. But they get a little bit tired. They get broken a little bit, so you could lose a little letter here or a little word, maybe even half a sentence, but you won't lose the whole thing. And the way to know what was missing is to go back to the original. And we do have original manuscripts. And this will be a surprise to some of you, that there are 24,633 manuscripts. What does a manuscript mean? It means handwritten originals. Some manuscripts are copies of originals, but that's why we have this era. I will show you the era of time later, but here, the number of manuscripts in 15 languages all happened in the first 200 years of Christianity. That's pretty good. These manuscripts go back to between 56 and 335. 5,309 of them are in the Greek language. The New Testament was written in Greek. The Old Testament was translated to Greek, and I'll show you some of that later. Latin. Latin was a big one because the Catholic Church changed from Greek to Latin. So the language of Christianity became Latin for many years, and it's still Latin in the liturgy of the church. They still say Latin prayers in the church. That's why we have 10,000 manuscripts in the Latin. And then we have the other languages, Ethiopic, Slavic, Armenian. Armenian was the first translation was the year 400, from what I remember now. I will see it later. Syriac, that's the language spoken in Iran, to a large portion of people, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and some in Jordan, and around the world, and even Chicago, these Assyrian people. Bohemic, Arabic, 75 manuscripts, Old Latin, Anglo-Saxon, Gothic, Sogdian, Old Syriac, which is called Karshuni, and then Persian and Frankish. So we have all these manuscripts, and they're all present, and you can actually visit them. You go to British Museum or Rome or France. Many of them are in European, but some of them are even in Egypt and in Iraq museums. And they're all recorded by scholars and have been examined, and they've been published. And there's a lot, if you want to study, that is published. Next. So I want to compare literature that is very well known and studied in universities, and nobody questions them. Here's Caesar and Plato and all these that I don't need to read them all, they're all in front of you. Down to Homer and the Iliad. How many of you have read any of these? There you go. When you study them, do people say, oh, Iliad wasn't written by Homer? They do. They question it, huh?
Well, he only spoke it orally.
Yeah, I know, but it's been recorded. Anyway, but it's attributed to Homer. But look at the difference. Caesar was written between 144 BC. The earliest copy known today is 900 AD. That's 1,000 years. And there's only 10 original copies, manuscripts found. And notice the others, 7, 8, 193. The largest is Homer, which is, earliest copy is 400 BC, 500 years time span between it and its original, and there's 643. Compare that with the New Testament. There's only 25 years between its Jesus and the first writing of the New Testament, and 24,633 manuscripts. I think that's amazing. Next. Now this thing I want to explain a little bit. Let's pause for a second. Just forget about this for a minute. I want to talk to you about something very important. There are people who say it was corrupted, but they cannot put time to that. When did it happen? Did it happen 1st century, 2nd, 3rd, 4th? Definitely, according to these manuscripts, it didn't happen in the first few centuries. Now, if the Quran, that's why I mention the Quran. I'm not here to attack Islam or anything. Just the reason I want to mention the Quran is that it's a manuscript that was recorded in the 7th century. If in the 7th century the Quran acknowledges the reliability of the Bible, then up to the 7th century there is no rumor that the Bible has been corrupted. It's common knowledge that the Bible is reliable. And it is something you cannot doubt. It is the Word of God. And God will protect, as we just read. So if anything had to happen to the Bible, it needs to happen after the 7th century. Okay? Well, in order for that to happen, that means all of these 24,000 manuscripts are fake. Well, let's say, okay, they're fake. Because you haven't seen them, you're going to believe my word for it? Let me give it to you. Let's burn all of the 24,633 manuscripts. Burn them all. Put them in one big pile in all these languages and burn them. Aha. There's still something. And that's what you're seeing right now. We have people who are Christian leaders. We call them patriarchs or the fathers of the church. Father meaning not he got married and had children, called Christians. Meaning they're the original Christians. They're the first Christians. The leaders of the church. When they write a book, tafsir or commentary, in order to write a book about Jesus or about anything religious, anything to do with Christianity and Judaism, they have to quote, they have to copy verses from the Old Testament and New Testament and say, Jesus said this, and he means that, and they'll have their opinion about what this means. It's called tafsir, or commentary, right? Well, there are people who have gone to these writings of the fathers. I have the volumes in my office that fill this table, one after the other, of all the writings of the fathers, the first 5 centuries of Christianity, and that's before Islam came. And this is a summary. Someone actually did this. No, we're still on that. This person, Justin Martyr, lived between 100 and 165 AD. That's 1st century into the 2nd century. Irenaeus, you see the years, 150 to 200. Clement, 88 to 97. Origen, 155 to 284. All of these before 339. That's the latest, the newest, Eusebius. Look on the column on the right. These are the number of quotations from the Bible, from the New Testament particularly, that they have written about. And these are collected. We have 330 from Justin, Irenaeus 1,800, and the one who quoted the most is Origen. 17,922 verses. And these have been compared, verse for verse, with the manuscripts and with the original and with the Bible that we have in our hands. Now, if you collect all these, it would be 36,289 verses of the Bible. Quotes. Some of the quotes are longer than a verse, a whole passage. Some of them overlap, but these are the number of verses. If you collect all of these together and put them in order, like we have Matthew and then Mark and Luke and John and Acts and so on, epistles, and we come to Revelation, you can reconstruct the whole New Testament, even if there are no manuscripts, just based on the writings of the scholars of the Christian faith, the first 300 years of Christianity. Don't you find that amazing? So even if the manuscripts are lost, they are preserved in the writings of people. Like my email is preserved in my original email that I sent to you. And that cannot be changed because it is sent. You look at it, it has the date, you can see when it was modified, if it was modified. But the copies can be messed up. However, we have original manuscripts and we have quotes, and all of them agree. Otherwise, Christianity would not stand on anything. Why do I have such confidence that I'm willing to come and share that with you? And people all over the world. Why are there so many Christians who are willing to even die for their faith? Because they're convinced absolutely that this is the Word of God. Then we have something else. Those translations, the manuscripts I shared with you, were how many in 15 languages. Now we're going to give you the age of these translations. Latin, 10,000 from 150 AD on. So we have all these. Some of them are earlier and others are later. So we have them from 150. Syriac, 150 on. And then you see 3rd and 4th centuries, 400 AD, 4th century, 5th century, 6th century, 6th century. This one apparently missed the century, 75th century. That's into the future. And so you get the point, is that we have records of these translations and they are dated. Some of them are either dated within the manuscript or they have been dated by scientific testing. So these are translations. But I'm not done with the translation idea. Even if we burn all the manuscripts and all of the writings of the fathers, we still have two translations that are very critical, that are still present today, and I have them on my computer, and you can have them on yours. You can download them. The Septuagint is one of them. Who knows what set means? What? 7. That's French. And Spanish similar. The Septuagint is a manuscript that was created between the 3rd and 2nd centuries before Christ. That's around 200 to 300 years before Christ. And it is a full translation of the entire Old Testament, from Hebrew to Greek. Are you amazed? Yeah. I am amazed. That's amazing that we still have that manuscript today. And people read it and study it in the Greek. And it helped us a lot understand, because it was written in Old Testament times before Jesus, before Christianity, and translated to Greek, so it helped us understand the Hebrew-Greek relationship between words. So when I did my Bible translation, I had to go to the Septuagint and to the Hebrew, Biblica, Hebraica, so that we can compare those two and find out how to translate it best. Because the Greek shed light on the meaning of the Hebrew, and the Hebrew shed light on the meaning of the New Testament in the Greek, because we have also the same language in the Old Testament. Now we have it in Greek. So you understand what I mean, or did I confuse you? Maybe I didn't confuse you, maybe I did, I don't know. But the Septuagint is one of these strong proofs that the Old Testament we have today is the exact Old Testament the Jews had at the time of Jesus. Isn't that amazing? Because the last book of the Old Testament was written before the Septuagint. It was 400 years before Christ, and this is around 250 years before Christ. The Septuagint was created, translated into Greek. Fast forward another 6 centuries, on the 4th century AD, after Christ, the entire Bible, that's the Old and New Testament, were translated into Latin. And that translation is called the Vulgata, or Vulgate in English. You know the word vulgar? When you speak vulgar language, it means popular. Volkswagen, it's popular. So Vulgate, it's Volkswagen. So Vulgate means the popular version. It was a translation made for the people so they can understand the Bible. Made it in simple Latin. Latin translation of the whole Bible in the 4th century, revised again in the 16th century. There's a revision to make it even, especially in the script. The Latin script changed a little bit from the ancient to the modern. So these two translations, if we cancel everything else I said, these two translations are 100% proof that the Bible has not been changed. Now, I'm not saying believe what it says. I'm only saying believe that it has not changed. Then, if you can trust it as a book, then you can look inside and see if you believe what it says. But right now, the point is it reliable as an original manuscript, or is it reflecting the original manuscripts without change? And I can stand here and I can bet my life on it, that it is the Word of God unchanged. We have another proof, comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls in the mid-1950s. That's not a long time ago, 60 years ago. There were two shepherds who lost their sheep in this desert, and they wandered, and they wandered there looking for the sheep, and they found these caves. They saw them from distance. I have been to that place myself. And it's near the Dead Sea, Al-Bahr al-Mayyit. Have you been there?
Oh, yeah.
This is the Qumran Valley, and they found old manuscripts. This is amazing. In 1956, right now, we're not talking anymore about manuscripts of the 4th century after Christ, Vulgata, or 2 centuries before Christ, the Septuagint, and all the 24,000 manuscripts. We're talking about right now, in our modern day, in my lifetime, they discovered manuscripts of ancient times that are exactly replicas of today. And I have seen them in the museum in Jerusalem. And I'm going to show you a picture. Here's a picture of one of them in the museum, on the wall of the museum. This one is not an original, but it's a copy, photocopied and put on parchments that looks exactly the way it was, because they wouldn't put something original right there for everybody to see. This is in Greek. This is in Hebrew, sorry. And I'll show you a close-up. The complete scroll of Isaiah. This is one book. The prophet Isaiah, copied 100 years before the birth of Christ. So again, it's before Christ. It's an ancient manuscript that was only found 60 years ago. And this is a close-up. Where is the close-up? Well, we'll see it in a second, probably. The Isaiah, the Qumran scrolls, which you just saw now, is 100 years before Christ. Isaiah Masoretic text, that's another manuscript, which was a copy of older ones, 900. And we compared these. There's 1,000 years between the Qumran scrolls and the Masoretic text. 1,000 years of the same book. The 100 years before is original, and the 900 is copies of copies of copies. And they're all the same. A careful comparison between the two texts that are 1,000 years apart has been made. In Isaiah 55, there are 17 letter differences only, which is amazing. After 1,000 years, to find only 17 letters. Now, if this was a class in university, and we'll show you the actual manuscripts, and I have a lot of it on my computer, I didn't have enough time to show you everything. So that's all I could do, all up till half an hour before I came here. 17 individual letters. And one reason letters change, it's like in Arabic the ha looks like the kha, looks the j. And the dot could be wiped out over time, and it could be a ha or a kha or a ja, we don't know. Only 17 letters in an entire book that's this thick, Isaiah. 10 are changes in style of writing, style meaning the calligraphy. 4 are changes in how words are spelled. Sometimes accents or dialects change, so the copier may be influenced by his accent. and only 4 of these. 3 are letters in the one-word difference in Isaiah 55:11, and this is it. They shall see light. In the Masoretic, it doesn't have the word light. They shall see. Doesn't change the meaning, but there is a word missing. And sometimes we know the Qumran is an older one. As you saw in these manuscripts here, you see some cuts, like here on the right side, your right side. There's a cut, there's a few words missing there, right? And that's how words get missing sometimes. But when you have many manuscripts, you can compose them. You can look at this, there's one missing here, it's not missing there. In this manuscript there's a word missing here, it's not missing there. And you do the comparison, you can construct the whole thing. You understand me, right? I'm speaking to intelligent people who are students. This is a close-up of the one of the pages. I can't make it any, oops. I can't make it any closer to you.
Hebrew.
Huh? That's Hebrew. This is the Isaiah, the 1,000 years before Christ manuscript found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now another thing, these are all external evidences, manuscripts and history and so on, and archaeology is involved in this. We're running out of time, so I will finish up with this. The Bible is 66 books, as I said. 39 of them are Old Testament, 27 are New. In the 39 books of the Old Testament, there are many prophecies. What is a prophecy? Like I prophesied to you that when you go home now, you're going to see the door of your house painted green. You know why? Because I sent somebody to paint it. That's possible, so that's not a good example. How about if I prophesy that in 10 years you're going to be living in China and you'll have 6 Chinese beautiful little kids? Yeah? Okay. I have no idea. Maybe you have a Chinese girlfriend now? No, you don't. So I have no logical reason. To predict that prediction. But if I say it now, and I'm serious, and I write it and sign on it, and give it to you and say, here's my address, 10 years from now, I'll be dead, but you can ask my dad, my son, tell them whether it happened or not. Now, if it actually happens, what do you say about me?
That's a prophet.
I'm a prophet. Well, let me tell you, I'm not a prophet. Because I have no clue who you'll marry and whether you'll ever go to China. But if I did say that, that's called a prophecy. We have in the Old Testament over 1,100 prophecies about all kinds of things. And 333, I say here more than 300, about Jesus alone. Just about Jesus. And these prophecies happened hundreds of years before he was born. I'm going to show you only 3 of them because of the time. And if those 3 convince you, it's enough. If they don't convince you, I can show you more. Because there are 333. One time a Russian scientist heard me speak. He said to me, I'm challenging you to show me these. So he happened to be living in my town. So we had lunch on a Tuesday and I made a copy, a printout of the 333. And I sat with him, and he said, oh, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't. I said, okay, forget it. Let's go to the next one. We did 150 of these prophecies together, and then he said, enough. This is amazing. He said, as a scientist, there's no possibility that by accident 150 prophecies can be fulfilled like this. He didn't agree with some of them. He said, oh, you can interpret it this way or that way. And so, well, there's enough of them that if you don't like 2 or 3 of them, that's fine. I'll give you another 330. So, the prophecies give me a lot of confidence that this is the Word of God, because like you would have confidence in me if actually you ended up having 6 Chinese beautiful You probably adopted them. Yeah. Here's a prophecy. I was with a Jewish man on an airplane once, and I said, when you were little, did you read the book of Isaiah? I said, yes. I said, did you stumble on this verse? So I opened the Bible and I read it to him. You can read it in Turkish if you like. It's right here. And these are the words. It said, therefore the Lord himself, the Lord meaning God, will give you a sign. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son and will call him Emmanuel. الرب نفسه يعطيكم آية هل عذراء تحبل وتلد ابنا وتسميه عمانوئيل. Okay, that's the Arabic of it. Now the word, the virgin will be with child, is a fancy poetic English word to say she will be pregnant. That's what the Hebrew says. The virgin will be pregnant and will give birth to a son. So I showed that verse with him. I said, do you remember? He said, no, I don't remember. I said, do you know what it means? He said, no clue. So I took him to another verse. And these are the three I'm sharing with you. I'll share them with him. 700 years later, well, the other verse will come later. 750 years later, Jesus was born from a young virgin named Mary. And we read this in the book of Matthew. The virgin will be with child. This one and this one are identical, but this is in Isaiah 7:14, 750 years before this verse, which is now in the Gospels, in the New Testament. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel. Which means, and this is added to the verse, to explain the word Emmanuel, because the Hebrews don't need to be translated. If you say to Hebrew, Emmanuel means God with us, they know. Why are you telling me that? But because it was written in Greek, it was translated, which means, in Hebrew, Imma means us. El means God. Elohim. God is with us. This is amazing. Now the next verse is in Isaiah, 2 chapters later. For us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. Government means authority. It's an old-fashioned English word for authority, meaning he will be a governor or leader. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And Jesus is known to be called the Prince of Peace. And that's a prophecy 750 years before about Jesus. The third verse is this. Micah, 500 years before Christ. So 300 years later, 250 years later, we have the prophet Micah. Micah in Arabic is Micha. Micha is like the name Michael. Who is Michael here? You are Michael. Michael, my middle name is Michael. I'm George Michael.
Wow.
So, Michael, meaning like God. Like God, that's the meaning in Hebrew. So Micah said these things 500 years before Christ. Well, it says here 735 to 700, so I was wrong. 735 to 700 BC. You, Bethlehem. Bethlehem is where? Where is Bethlehem?
Palestine.
In Palestine. Some people say Israel. Some people say Palestine. Both. It's in Bethlehem, it's in Palestine. It's in the West Bank. I have been to Bethlehem a number of times. And near there is where I met my wife 43 years ago. And we've been married now 37 years. But you, Bethlehem, Ephrata. Ephrata is the old ancient name for Bethlehem. And both names are mentioned here because by the time the 8th century before Christ, the name has changed to Bethlehem. You, Bethlehem, Ephrata, though you are small among the clans of Judah. Why small? Because it's a tiny village. Still now, it's still a small village. But 3,000 years ago, it was very small. Maybe there were probably 300 people living in that whole town. It was a house of bread. Bethlehem means Lechem. Beit Lechem means bread. Or Luqum, which means food. because it provided food, bread for Jerusalem. So it's like the farmers who produced the wheat, and they grinded it to flour, and they made bread, and people would go there to buy the bread to sell it in Jerusalem, which was a city. So in that town, it says, even though you're small, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel. And the amazing thing about this verse, it says, this man will be born 700 years later, but he originated long time ago in ancient times. You see, because we believe Jesus existed before he existed on earth, he existed in heaven. He is the Word who was always with God. And that's a different topic, but this is a reference to Jesus who will be born in Bethlehem, naming the name of the town, which is a tiny little town, but someone important who will be called the ruler, because he's called the King of the Jews, or King of Kings and Lord of Lords. 700 years later, Jesus was born in the tiny village of Bethlehem in Palestine/Israel. And that's all I have in terms of slides. So we have the internal evidence of the prophecies. We have many other internal evidences. For example, the history, the archaeology of the Bible. And to the extent that many historians and archaeologists go to the Bible to find out facts of archaeology on the ground. And they go do digs based on stories of the Bible. Thank you for listening, and we will open it up now to questions and answers.